Hello everyone, happy Tuesday, happy So What Day. I am trying to load a couple more pictures for you here this morning as we get started because I spent most of last week at QuiltCon in Atlanta, and I thought you might want to see some of the photos that I took. So bear with me just a minute because this was kind of a last minute change to what I was going to talk about first thing this morning. So bear with me as these photos load, and then I will tell you all about them. First off, since I just got these on the screen here, this quilt that you're seeing right here, hold on a moment, was best in show at QuiltCon. And it's just so striking, and all solid fabrics with all the texture and dimension and design created by the quilting. So just really an amazing piece as we walked into QuiltCon. And also this was right on the wall as you walked in, which, which was a really, cool, nice, just giant sign on the wall as you walked into the vendor halls. So it was a little bit different experience from previous QuiltCons, just because the vending and the quilt show and everything was all on different floors. So we all had to take escalators to go from one floor to the next, and then the education was kind of in a different area. So it was a little bit more spread out, which, doesn't bother me in the least. It makes it a little more manageable to walk around and shop, and just, aired it out a little bit. So it was a good time. And I have a little video to show you of a very small portion of the actual quilt show, because it was just so massive. I mean, as you can imagine, it's QuiltCon, so it's all about the quilts. And of course, I was in the sulky booth and, met a lot of you. So if I saw you at QuiltCon Atlanta, give me a shout out in the comments. And I may just show off a picture of you here. Let's see what else I have. This was an absolutely amazing quilt. I love these quilts that are, photo montages, basically. I mean, this one, you really have to step back from it to really, see all of it. But all of that fabric piecing, and it's all shades of blacks and whites, and just an incredible quilt. I mean, I just got the chills showing it to you. Like, seriously. Those quilts always just are so unbelievable to me, how we can create such works of art with fabric and thread. All right, so this one I really wanted to show you all. So let me make it a little bit smaller. All right, so as you walk up on this quilt, I believe this was in the applique category. So, it's a statement piece, lots of bright colors, textures. And then there's a sign next to this quilt that says, take a photo of this quilt using flash photography. And here is why. So this is what this quilt looks like when you use a flash, because the quilter used reflective thread to quilt this piece. So when you take a photo with a flash, you can really see a totally different look to this quilt. So again, here it is without the flash. Here it is with the flash. Isn't that amazing? And if you didn't know this already, Sulky has a reflective thread. It's called Cry, and it stands for Coated Reflective Yarn. So the thread has actual little tiny glass beads in it that make it reflective when light hits it. So it just takes on a totally different look and dimension and feel when you see the thread reflecting the light. So if you want to play around with that thread, you can grab up a spool at sulky.com. I've used it for a number of things, Halloween costumes, wall art for your front door looks really cool when, at night when the car lights hit it. Just such cool things you can do with thread effects. Oh, and then here is me with Sally Tomatoes, Jessica Barrera. So, it's not very often we get to actually see each other in person. As you know, we do our New Year's Eve events every year over at sewingonline.sulky.com. So we got to be reunited in person. It was good times. All right, so I also have a video to show you all, and it is a little bit longer video, but I will narrate, and I think you'll find it really inspiring, especially since we are now in National Quilting Month. So it's very fitting that we start off this So What episode with a little quilting inspiration. And then I'm going to bring you a really cool tutorial for an embellishment technique. I'm going to go over how to do yarn couching. If you've never tried this surface embellishment, it's actually way easier than you might think. So I'm going to take you through that, and I'll show you a really cute springy pillow that you can create to showcase your yarn couching surface embellishment. And also be sure to be putting your comments, questions, all of those good things in the live chat and in the comments below. And make sure you're engaging with the post today, giving me those thumbs up, those great emojis, all kinds of things, sharing out the post. Make sure you like our page on Facebook. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. That way I can notify you if you are our big winner of the day. One person who is engaging with the post, whether on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, will be chosen at random to win one of our fabric bundles. We have some mystery fabric bundles at sulky.com, and they're valued at about $47. So one lucky person is going to win one of our fabric grab bags, and those are 5 1-yard cuts of mystery high-quality fabric. So really fun to dive into that and see what you can create. All right, so let me grab this video so I can share it with you. And you'll get to see a small portion of the quilt show at QuiltCon. Let's see here. All right, so I started just on one end of the haul, and I tried to get really close up on some of these quilts so you can see all the texture and those quilting stitches. And then you can also see the fabulous, phenomenal piecing and piecework and applique and everything. So in this quilt show, there are, of course, different sections where people can enter their quilts. There's a small quilt section, there's an applique section, there's playing with different colors, different fabric lines, different quilting techniques depending on the sponsor of that particular part of the show. And Sulky was lucky enough to be the handwork sponsor. And we have some of those videos in our stories on social media, so you can check those out. So this video is some of the other quilts, and I'll let you guess and try and see, what portion of the quilt show I am in. You can see a lot of these are the same color family. These are almost all working with solid fabrics. Look at all those curved piecing seams that are just fantastically done. And not all of these quilts are winners. It's as far as winning an actual ribbon, but in my book, man, they're all phenomenal works of art. So just the play with color and shading and the dark to light, just really, really amazing. And all those little squares and all of that work. And I think that whole thing was just straight line quilted. And here we go, lots of other shapes being played with as well. Isn't this so neat? So you can use the outside of your shapes, the inside of your shapes, and you kind of challenge yourself, you know, is this all done with piecing? Or are these applique shapes? And are these quilted on a long arm machine or a domestic home sewing machine? This is just absolutely amazing. And all this texture and, you know, initial design work all done in quilting. I did come upon a few people. It was a very busy show, especially compared to last year. I had a hard time deciding which aisles to go in with my camera to show you all because, you know, we only have so much time here on So What, and I didn't want to give away the entire quilt show to you because I want you to be inspired to attend a QuiltCon. If it ever comes to a city near you, you should definitely check it out for one day or all 4 days. You know, not only is there the quilt show and, you know, there's the vendor hall where you can purchase fabrics directly from the fabric companies. And a lot of the times you will get bundles, fat quarter bundles, or different yardage bundles from pre-cuts to even cutting custom yardage. You can find this from the fabric manufacturers before they even hit the stores sometimes as well. Or they are strike-offs of prints that may or may not be available because they've all been gobbled up by the quilt shops who are selling the yardage in the upcoming seasons. This one is so amazing. I mean, I honestly, I don't know how they come up with the best in show with all of these phenomenal entries in all the different categories. And putting together these different color combinations, as if that wasn't difficult enough, then combining all of these different shapes. And hopefully I came in close on this one. Yes, here we go, because the entire background of this is also quilted. And you can't really see it from far away, but once you get up close, wow. Look at all of that thread, all of the stitching details. It's absolutely amazing. Linda is asking, what is a strike-off? A strike-off is kind of like a piece of yardage they'll take off of the main bolt after it's printed before it gets put, like folded and put onto the yardage bolts. And then those strike-offs go to the fabric manufacturers so that they can do promotions with them or so that they have a sample in their offices to refer to answer questions or to help designers or to match up with some other fabric prints or solids, things like that. Absolutely amazing. So you can tell that there's a color theme going on with this particular portion of the quilt show. It's either these blues and greens or these purples and pinks. So on either side of these aisles, the designers are really playing with these particular colors and these color families. Really interesting positioning of blocks and how these are all put together. And although QuiltCon really has more of a modern feel to it in, you know, quilt design and technique, there's also, you know, a play on the more traditional type of quilt blocks, and then they put a modern twist on it some way. I believe this is all applique work. And again, hopefully I come in close on this one because the entire sort of navy blue background is all quilted. Look at this. Absolutely incredible. And a lot of people, at this QuiltCon, I would say it's very, typically, they'll use like one thread color for all of the quilting, and they pick a neutral like a tan or a light gray for all of the quilting, especially if it is, one color in the background. However, I saw a lot more thread work and colorized thread work. So blendables thread, variegated threads. For example, the coated reflective yarn, the reflective threads, the glowing threads. So a lot more playfulness with the actual quilting stitches than I'm typically used to seeing at the QuiltCon quilt shows. So I thought that was really neat because, thread is just another one of the stars of the show, right? It's not always all about the fabric, especially evidenced by these quilts that have these solid backgrounds. And then when you get real close, you can really see the texture and dimension and the design that you're creating with those stitches on top of the design you've already created with all the piecing. Look at all of this. Sort of bubble quilting, I call it, with circles mixed with all kinds of different motifs and really just having fun with it. So now I'm moving on to a different portion of the quilt show. You can see the colors of the fabrics have changed, a little bit different styles. This one has heavily textured quilting inside of all of these star blocks. And then straight line or matchstick quilting in all of those border pieces, which really gives it nice movement. Just so neat. I loved this. There was definitely a trend, like a nod back to the 80s with cassette decks and boom boxes and roller skate motifs and lightning bolts. I was seeing that everywhere. Really neat. Dee is asking, are these quilts done on a quilting machine? So there's a lot of different, you can see this quilt has a mixture of hand quilting, free motion quilting, straight line quilting. Some of them are done on a long arm machine. Some of them are done on a home machine. This is all big stitch quilting done by hand using a thick 12-weight thread. And I did see a lot of quilters going into the direction of more hand quilting styles, which was really interesting as well. Lots of people coming to the sulky booth to get heavier weight thread so that they could try their hand at big stitch quilting or hand done quilting. So that was definitely a trend. You can see this one is all hand done. Excuse me. This is all straight line quilting. I think this is the smaller quilts exhibit. And just some amazing piecing done. And the optical illusions you can create with your fabric and thread work. Another one with straight lines. It can be really striking even with seemingly simple quilting stitches. Lots of floral motifs, but most of all, mostly geometric, overall. And then here we've got some bias work with applique. I might be entering the applique section of the show. We shall see if that appears to be correct. Just another striking portrait quilt. I love that we can create faces and facial features and all of those just really neat photography techniques with quilting. Now, if you've got a scrap bin, better get started, because I believe that's how this one began. Absolutely amazing. We've got some abstract works as well. Lots of different applique shapes, playing with colors again. And isn't this incredible? And oftentimes, you know, these applique quilts especially, oh, here's another portrait quilt. I have seen this one circling social media as well. It's pretty amazing. But I was going to say, oftentimes, you know, these quilts, it appears as though you're looking at a fabric print, and then you get closer and you notice it's not a fabric print. They've made this print using fabrics. This is the Pop-Tart quilt. I believe it's called toaster pastry. Nope, Pop-Tart quilt. What a cute idea. Just incredible inspiration. So this is a third place in applique called Where We Connect. Unbelievable work with all of these circle appliques. Just all of the time and work that goes into this quilt. And I love this background green color as well. And this was first place in applique for obvious reasons. Look at all those circles that had to be appliqued. This is a second place quilt. I love these intertwining looking circles. Very intricate. Called Out of the Blue. And you can go on the QuiltCon website, see the top winners in each category. I believe they have either a slideshow or at least just photos of them as well. And there were people from all over the country, not just the United States, but all over the world, in fact, at QuiltCon. Some really incredible pieces. There was actually an entire area of the quilt show devoted to children's quilts. So there were a lot of kids walking the show with a little button or ribbon that says, "My quilt is in the show." And I just love seeing all these kids walking around so proud of their quilts being in the show. And you would never know that these quilts were made by kids with the incredible detail and just, you know, really perfectionism in a lot of those quilts. So I know this is kind of a long video, but I just couldn't stop once I got started, and I wanted you all to see as much as possible. And like I said, this is just a small fraction of the quilt show, and I'm walking rather quickly to be able to show you lots of different works by different designers. So you could see how you could just get lost in the quilt show for an entire afternoon. And this was on the very top floor of the event. So away from the hustle and bustle of all of the vendors and the classes. So you could really just, you know, take your time and read about all the designers and the inspiration behind all of the quilts. criminal quilting, this is called. It's like a thumbprint, really unique. I would never think of something like that. And just different ways of slicing through your fabric, putting it back together again for all these different looks. And sort of collage quilts, you know, using different sort of heirlooms in your quilts. Obviously, you know, that's a big part of quilting and always has been. You know, I was listening to one of our Why I Sew podcast episodes yesterday, and, you know, one of our guests was talking about how quilting imprints you. You know, it imprints your world and your life, and you think about, you know, as a kid or even now, or different parts of your life, cuddling up to different quilts or remembering different people based on the quilt that's around you or that has been on your bed or hanging on your wall from when you were growing up, and just how impactful quilting really can be. So it's really not just about, you know, making art or working with your hands, although that's certainly a giant part of it, and about sewing in general for all of us. But it's this, you know, making an imprint. I just thought that was a great way of putting it. And again, this is the small quilt category on one side, and then I'm not really sure what this other side is, but look at all the quilting stitches in this quilt. Absolutely incredible. Switching from straight line to wavy lines to free motion to circles, all within the same quilt. The patience and the focus, you know, that's needed. So this is first place in the small quilt category. Lots of different stitches in here, using different thread weights, different thread colors, mixing big stitch quilting with straight line quilting. And, you know, this is like a zebra head or something. Really cool how that is interpreted. All right, so we're coming upon the end here, I promise, and then we'll get to today's tutorial. Wow, this is like a confetti quilt or something. All of those tiny little squares. It's just phenomenal. And again, with these intersecting circles, I think that technique is so cool. And all kinds of different shapes. So this is the use of negative space. So again, you can see a lot of solid fabrics. You know, typically the print is on the back side, if there even is one. And what's interesting is a lot of people want to see the back side of the quilt. They actually had to make several announcements during the quilt show to ask people to stop touching the quilts, because they were wanting to, you know, turn the corner of the quilt to see the back side. So they had a lot of people walking around with their gloves and whatnot. And you can see just how close that guy wanted to get to take a picture of this, because look at these intersecting quilting lines in the tiniest little square grid, and two different thread colors, one going vertically, one going horizontally. So it's easy to see how this won first place. But as I was saying, there are a lot of people walking around with gloves and whatnot, so that you know, they could turn the quilts over so people could see the wrong sides and really see the different thread work. You know, sometimes they'll use one thread color on the top, another thread color on the back, and when you reverse the quilt, it's like looking at a totally different piece of art. So I hope you all enjoyed my QuiltCon video, and I know it was just a small fraction of what is there to be seen at QuiltCon. I had some other smaller videos of walking around different vendors and things like that. But I really thought that this one was the most inspirational to show you today. And perhaps we can show the others at another time because, you know, I had some video at the Sulky booth as well. But in general, me taking that video was like the one time I got to leave the booth because it was very, very busy. Lots of people coming over and visiting and shopping at the Sulky booth. So, you know, just tons and tons to do, and a great time was had by all. All right, I want to let everybody know before we get to our tutorial that at the end of this month, we are presenting a Guild-only education experience over at sewingonline.sulky.com. It is the Crossbody Case Lounge and Learn. Our Lounge and Learn events are 4-hour events, and as I said, they are for guilds only. So if you are part of a guild, you can still sign up and get your guild members to come along with you for our virtual best-in-class education experience. We have kits available for the crossbody case at a special price for guild members, and you'll learn how to make this crossbody case, which, you know, features this really cool pieced thread spool on the front of the case. It is made of a mixture of faux leather and quilting cottons in this really cute little sewing motif, with a little bit of quilting, and then an adjustable faux leather strap so you can wear it as a messenger bag, crossbody style, or even shorten it up for a handbag. Lots of different things you can do with this cute little case. And you'll be learning this from start to finish with video instruction. You will also learn all about the Sulky thread line, which threads to use, when and where. And it's just really, if you've never had an in-person Sulky educator come to your guild, this is a great opportunity for us to come to all of your guild members. Maybe some of your guild members can't travel to those in-person events. This is a great way to have that virtual experience and to come together as a group on your computers. So you can check this out in the link that I put on the description of today's post. You can head on over and check out. We've got this event happening at the end of this month, and then we also have some additional dates where we come to you again virtually with either the crossbody case or our strap happy tote. So be sure to check those out if you belong to a guild, or if you know somebody who belongs to a guild, please forward that information for us. Also, next Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 week from today, everybody, is our freestanding lace tea lights. There we go. Thank you. This is our free webcast with Sheila Ryan of Designs by Baby Moon. And Sheila's going to take us through step by step of how to create these adorable hanging egg-shaped lanterns in the hoop of our embroidery machine. So we're going to be learning a lot of freestanding lace techniques as well as freestanding applique techniques to assemble these little lanterns that fit over a battery operated tea light. So they kind of glow and flicker, and you can hang them, or you can make them into a centerpiece in the middle of your spring table. Also, she's going to go over how to use the bonus charm designs to create little hanging ornaments or little earrings. So lots of great things you will learn next Tuesday over at sewingonline.sulky.com. Be sure to grab up a kit, because we do have a kit for that available at a special price, and the price is only good until the night of the webcast. So you'll want to grab up one of these kits because they are going like hotcakes, and I want to make sure that you get a kit if you're joining us next Tuesday. All right, so I think that's all of our business, and we can get to today's project, which is really fun. I've always wanted to do this. You know, I've done couching in the past, but I'm seeing a lot of these kind of sweatshirts with, you know, a phrase on them. It'll say like time for coffee or celebrate or something like that. And it's actually done with yarn or with like chenille lettering. So it's really textured and pops out. And some of them are done in kind of like a Ray Dunn font, but a lot of them are done just in like cursive lettering. So I thought it would be cute to do some yarn couching in the style of this kind of trendy look, but put it on a pillow for spring. So I kind of developed this project to make it the easiest as possible for people who don't have, let's say, a yarn couching foot, or if you're nervous about, you know, starting the couching and ending it so that your yarn doesn't fray. This is a great way to do it by putting it on a pillow, because we can elongate our word or phrase and make our little tails of those words, or letters rather, go into the seam allowance. That way everything is nice and contained, and you have your nice focal point phrase on your spring pillow. So that's what we're going to go over today. So again, if you have questions, comments about today's project, please put them in the comments or the live chat. I will be addressing them as we move forward with the tutorial. And as long as you're commenting, giving me those great emojis, somehow engaging with the post today, you will be eligible for one of our fabric grab bags. I will be giving one of those away to one lucky viewer who is engaging with the post today. All right, so here is how the pillow turned out. Quite happy with it, actually. I kind of love it. And, you know, I knew I wanted to also add pom-pom fringe, because those of you who watch So What on the regular know that I'm kind of obsessed with pom-pom fringe. I think it's underutilized, underappreciated, and so fun. So I thought it was a great way also to add a pop of color to the pillow without using a fabric print, because I really thought a fabric print was going to compete too much with our phrase on the pillow that we're doing with yarn. So I chose for this fabric a colored lightweight denim fabric. And the reason I went with that was because ultimately when the weather gets better, I'm going to use this pillow as an outdoor porch pillow. And a fabric like a denim or a canvas or a sunbrella or a coated outdoor fabric, that's really going to be best when you want to put a pillow outdoors so that you can spot clean it easily. You know, a denim or canvas is just a little more heavyweight to kind of take, you know, wind, dust, debris, that kind of thing. So of course I don't plan on keeping this pillow outside overnight and things like that, but if you live in a friendly climate that allows you to do that, or you could just bring it in at night, things like that. At any rate, I went with a little bit heavier weight fabric. Now you could certainly do this technique on a lighter weight cotton fabric, but you do want a stable woven fabric so that when you're adding all of your stitching to attach your yarn, you know, to the fabric, that your fabric isn't going to kind of tunnel underneath the yarn. And you can also add interfacing or some heavier weight stabilizer to your lighter weight fabric if you have one that you really want to use. You do need to make it a little heftier in one of those ways. So I thought best bet was to go with a lightweight denim canvas fabric. You could even use denim that you would use for jeans. Just don't get a super stretchy type of denim. But I think that would look really cute with a lighter colored yarn on top. It would really pop. You could do kind of a nautical theme with it as well. Maybe write ahoy or something like that on it, and you have a really cute deck pillow, something like that. All right, so we're going to cut 2 rectangles of our fabric for our for our front of the pillow that we're going to add the couching, and then of course the back of the pillow. And this pillow is not lined. I did a zipper closure and the pom-pom fringe. So if you want to do a lined pillow, or if you want to omit the zipper and just whip stitch your pillow shut, you certainly can do that as well. And you can see that I chose to use a pillow form, and I chose one of these longer bolster pillow forms just because I wanted my phrase to go across it, and I like the look of a longer pillow on my couch and on my outdoor decor because this can go across a bench seat. But if you have a smaller, outdoor chair or recliner or something that you want to write on, you can simply make your phrase a little bit smaller so that it fits the pillow dimensions that you want to create. So we're really just learning the technique here. You can change up the sizes, the pillow forms. You can stuff it with fiberfill instead of a pillow form if you prefer. So, pillows are so versatile, and you can really create it any way you want. So the other thing we need, in addition to our pom-pom fringe, our zipper, and our 2 fabric rectangles, are some stabilizers. So I mentioned when you're working with a lighter weight fabric, you will want to bolster that up with a little bit of stabilizer or interfacing so that, when you're stitching, your fabric remains nice and flat. Now, even with the lightweight denim, I added sulky, what did I use? Soft and sheer? I just completely blanked, but it is in the description of today's post. And I used that on the back side of the fabric that I was going to add the yarn couching to. Now on the top side, I used sticky Fabrisolve, and that is how I transferred my design to the fabric. It also gives you an extra layer of stabilization during the stitching process. So I bought the sticky Fabrisolve on the roll, and I just rolled out a sheet, stuck it to the top of my fabric, and then I planned out my design. I simply just wrote in a fabric marker. I used a friction highlighter pen, which comes off simply by the heat of an iron, but you could use chalk, what have you, something that's going to disappear easily in case it transfers to your fabric by mistake. Now, sticky Fabrisolve is a water-soluble, adhesive-backed stabilizer. So, thankfully, when I'm all done with the couching, all done with constructing my pillow, I can wash this away entirely. No one will know it was ever there. I don't have to remove any of the marker because it's all going to come out with the Fabrisolve. But I still, caution or encourage you to use a fabric safe removable marking pen when you're transferring the design. So I just freehanded the hello, and I made sure that the tails of my first and last letters are going into the seam allowance or, beyond the short fabric edges. That way, the ends of my yarn are going to be caught in the seam allowance, and I don't have to worry about them fraying apart or trying to finish them in some way. They can simply be inside the pillow, and it's the easiest way to go about doing that part of it. So what I did was took a little Wonder Clip, clipped the end of my yarn, and I should mention I used a super chunky yarn for this. Now, if you are lucky enough to have a couching foot, or maybe you have like a beaded trim foot, something like this for your sewing machine, what that's going to look like is you have your standard presser foot. Just take this one. You have your standard presser foot, but a couching foot has a little bump on the center or along one side of it, and that little bump is where your yarn fits in while you're sewing it. So you don't have to worry about adjusting your presser foot pressure to accommodate the loft of the yarn while you're sewing. But if you don't have a yarn couching foot, I did the entire tutorial on the Sulky blog using a standard presser foot for those of us who don't have that foot accessory. So you can check out your particular machine, brand, make, or model. Go on their website and you can see all the different feet that are available to you. And chances are they have a couching foot or a cording foot, it'll be called sometimes. Sometimes a cording foot has a little pigtail coming off of the end of it, and you would thread your yarn into that pigtail and then underneath the foot so that you can zigzag stitch over it and it isn't being compromised by the pressure of this foot. So the different couching feet types that are available are going to vary based on machine, brand, make, or model. So I did not drop the feed dogs. You want to leave them so that it's guiding your fabric through, but you may have to adjust the pressure of your presser foot. Make sure that your yarn is gliding underneath the foot without being smushed on its way while the needle is sewing over it. So you're going to need to do a couple of test stitch outs, or test stitches rather, to make sure that your pressure of your presser foot is adequate and not, doesn't have too much pressure on that yarn while you're sewing it. And just consult your machine manual for adjusting that, and just lift it up ever so slightly so that you can sew right over that yarn without smushing it, because you want that lofty texture of that yarn. So I used a Wonder Clip and I clipped one end of the yarn along the end of that, the line right there of my H, okay? And that's the only part of the yarn that I'm actually going to secure, because the rest I'm going to guide while I am sewing. So take it slow. We are not in a race. We are not writing a novel on our pillow, right? It's just one word. So we can take it slow and mind those curves. Now, I find, it's definitely easier to do a cursive font of some type like I did here, so that your yarn is in one continuous line across your pillow, especially if you've never done couching before. If you're doing block letters, you'll have those stops and starts where you will have to finish the ends of your yarn by zigzagging a bunch over it or maybe coiling it up. And then in some cases, depending on what your yarn is made of, you may even also need a little bit of fray check or something like that on the end of your yarn. So to avoid that entirely, I did a cursive font where all of my letters were connected to each other. So we will begin by sewing a zigzag stitch, and we want to make sure that our zig is hitting the left edge of the yarn and our zag is hitting the right edge of the yarn. We don't want to go beyond the yarn, because then we're just creating like a casing for the yarn to fit through, and ultimately it could slip out of there, especially if our end is not attached in that seam allowance, right? So we want to make sure that we are sewing through that yarn, but just barely along one side and then along the other. So your stitch width is really going to be dependent on the width of your yarn. So again, do some test stitch outs to make sure that your stitch width of your zigzag is hitting that yarn on either side, okay? Now, as far as thread goes, I tried it two different ways. First, I did a sample where I used Sulky Invisible thread on the top because I didn't want anything to compete with the yarn. And then I used 50 weight cotton thread in the bobbin, the same thread I was going to use. Well, actually, no, I used Poly Deco to construct it, but I like to pair the invisible thread with a little bit lighter weight thread underneath so that it's kind of pulling to the wrong side. So I tried that version, and quite honestly, I didn't love the look of it. Now, it's really going to depend on the color of yarn that you choose, because I chose clear invisible thread on this really dark navy plushy yarn, and I could actually kind of see the invisible thread. You know, it almost had like a reflective quality to it. I don't know how to describe it. So I wasn't loving it. So I switched to the 50 weight cotton thread that matched my yarn perfectly on top. And I used a 50 weight cotton thread that matched my fabric perfectly in the bobbin. And that was my favorite result. The 50 weight cotton thread was very soft. It just totally disappears into the yarn. The invisible thread, you know, definitely can still work. And it's really going to just depend on the yarn that you choose. So I zigzag stitch and we're just following the curves, and you can see how I'm just guiding the yarn back and forth, catching either side of that yarn as I go. Then when I hit an ending point of a word, I sink my needle into the fabric, pivot the fabric, and then change up the direction of the yarn and continue zigzagging across it until I have my entire phrase completed. And someone is asking, can you do this with ribbon? Absolutely. With ribbon, you just need to be careful with your zigs and zags so that you are catching the ribbon with each stitch. Because what can happen is, since ribbon is flat, if you grab the edge of the ribbon and it wants to twist as you're zigzagging, right? Then you'll get these little crinkly edges of ribbon, and you want to make sure that you're sewing it nice and flat. Another thing you can do with ribbon is plan out your design and actually lay your ribbon on the fabric, and then put your sticky Fabrisolve, another layer of it, over the top, sandwiching all of your ribbon in place so you don't have to pin it, fiddle with it, you know, and it'll stay nice and flat while you're zigzagging over it. Then you'll wash away all of the layers of that sticky Fabrisolve, and no one will ever know it was there. All right. So after all of that, we want to trim away some of that sticky Fabrisolve so that we just have less to get rid of. So I just gently lift up my sticker and trim it really close to the yarn, being careful not to nick the yarn or any of the stitching that I've added, and just really carefully peel it away and then trim, peel it away and then trim so that it's off of your fabric when you're trimming it so you don't nick your fabric underneath. And then once you've gotten out as much as you can, what I like to do is I throw my piece of fabric into my washing machine on a rinse and spin cycle. I don't even wash it. I just put it in the rinse cycle. It gets rid of all of the stabilizer, and then I can press out all of those wrinkles. Now, this lightweight denim, very wrinkly. Also, it has a tendency to fray a lot. So before I threw it in the washing machine, I did a fairly narrow zigzag along the entire fabric perimeter. That way I had minimal fraying edges when I rinsed away all the stabilizer. But as you can see, very wrinkly, so you'll need to press around your yarn. Now, if your yarn is made of something that cannot withstand heat from the iron, do this very carefully. Iron from the wrong side. Do a test. Use a press cloth. Use a small, tiny detail iron to get in those pieces and make sure that they're nice and flat. You will still have that stabilizer behind the work. Here you can see my stabilizer is still behind. You can see all my zigzag stitches with that thread that matches that light teal fabric. So I pressed it from both sides and until it was nice and as flat as I could possibly get it. I also recommend using this Mary Ellen's Best Press. If you have not used this before, it's really great for fabrics. You could also use like a liquid stabilizer almost afterwards to make sure that it stays nice and flat when you're adding your trim and your zipper and turning your pillow right side out and all of that. But the Best Press was really a great tip. because this fabric just got so wrinkly during that removal process. Now, you don't have to put your fabric rectangle into the washing machine on a rinse and spin. You can rinse it away under running water in your bathtub, and then you can let it dry flat on a towel, and you will have less wrinkling that way as well. All right, so here we have our finished Hello yarn couching on our pillow rectangle. And, you know, we've done as much pressing as we possibly can to make it nice and flat. And now is the more fun part of adding our pom-pom fringe. So I like to use Wonder Clips to clip my pom-pom fringe around the entire perimeter of my embellished rectangle. And I stop and start the trim along the lower edge center, and I just overlap the trim ends. And I leave a little bit of extra because, you know, you might even want to leave more than I did here to trim off later, because sometimes as we're basting it in place, it can have some stretching, or maybe we missed a corner, something like that. We want to make sure that we have plenty. But this is how I like to just crisscross the trim so that my pom-poms are nice and even going across, and you cannot tell where that join is. And I'm using a jumbo pom-pom fringe here. They have a lot of nice springy and summery pom-pom fringe colors in the stores right now. There's rainbow, and I thought this one was really pretty and really coordinated with the fabric that I found. So for the basting of the trim, I installed a zipper foot. You might have a trim foot or a narrow edge foot. You need something that is not going to hit those giant pom-poms while you're basting that in place. So just lengthen your stitch length to a 5.0 and baste this around the entire rectangle. And now we're going to add our zipper along the pillow lower edge. So I start with a zipper that is longer than my rectangle. And I just baste it right along that trim edge. And you can sew it right along that trim edge as well if you don't want to baste it. You can use double-sided basting tape to make sure that it doesn't slip out of place. Or you can use lots of those trusty Wonder Clips to make sure that it doesn't shift while you're sewing it. And I just move my zipper pull all the way off, not off of the zipper tape, but all the way off of the pillow fabric. That's why I like to use a zipper that's a little bit longer than my fabric rectangle, because I don't have to deal with moving my pull out of the way of the stitching and that type of thing. I just move it entirely off the rectangle, sew down the zipper tape, and then I'm going to add my back pillow rectangle. But first, we're going to trim off that excess pom-pom trim that we overlapped. So you'll trim off those poms and you'll trim off the extra tape once we've got our zipper securely in place. We don't need any of that extra bulk right there. And now our trim has been basted and sewn, and our zipper is sewn in place just along the front side of our pillow. Now we're going to add our opposite zipper tape to our pillow back. So you'll put your fabrics right sides together, and you're kind of sandwiching that zipper. And now we're going to sew along the opposite zipper tape edge, and get as close as you can to the zipper teeth without touching them, of course. So use your zipper foot and feel in there with your fingers or fingernail, or maybe you have a stiletto tool to make sure that your needle is in the proper position. And now you can see, once you take your fabrics and turn them to the right side, we've got our pom-poms attached, we've got our zipper along the lower edge, and now we've just got to sew it up. So we need to make sure to open our zipper about halfway, otherwise we will never be able to get into our pillowcase. And we are going to clip or pin the entire pillow perimeter except for the zipper area. So you can see all of my wonder clips around my pillow. And we're actually going to sew starting in from the zipper, maybe 4 inches on either side for a pillow that's this large. I start sewing about 4 inches from the zipper end, go across, up the short edge, across the upper edge, down the opposite short edge, and then about 4 inches in. That kind of, snugs in our zipper tape. And now you'll turn your pillow right side out. All 4 corners have been sewn. So your zipper is inside of those lower edge corners, your zipper ends. And then you can insert your pillow form. I love making pillows like this with the zippers because it allows me to switch out my pillow covering and use that same pillow form over and over again. All right, so you'll just put in your pillow form, zip it right up, and you're good to go. So it's a great way to practice a new surface embellishment technique and have a fun little new spring pillow for your decor. So you can also, I saw people asking, can they do this on a shirt or a sweatshirt? And you certainly can. You do need to figure out how you're going to finish the ends of your yarn, unless you are going to open up the seams of your shirt or sweatshirt and have your couching extend into the side seams of your garment. I mean, in my opinion, honestly, that's how it's going to hold up the best through multiple washings. But there's definitely ways of finishing your yarn ends. You can coil them around themselves and zigzag stitch a bunch or do a star stitch or something like that over the end of your yarn so it's nice and secure in the stitching. But I really like the idea, or the concept rather, of extending it into the side seam. If you're using a ready-made garment, you would want to open the side seams anyways so that you can have a nice flat work surface to add your couching. So why not extend your phrase or image or what have you into the side seam for your ends? Especially, like I said, if it's your first time doing this technique, I think that's the easiest and most seamless way of adding the yarn without worrying about it fraying or not holding up over time. So it's, a cute little technique to try. Another way to use our needle and thread to personalize something, and you could say hello spring on your pillow. You could say Merry Christmas on your pillow. So it all depends on how large you want your letters, how big your pillow is. And I really like using that sticky Fabri-Solvi. Just put it over the top of your fabric and start drawing on it and plan out a design. And I had several different colors of my fabric highlighter, and I knew that my final color was going to be red. So I practiced using a teal color, and if I didn't like that, I could either just quickly iron it away or go over with a little bit darker fabric marker until I had my design really where I wanted it to be. Now you could certainly print out a font that you like on your printer and then transfer that to your sticky Fabri-Solvi so that your design is totally, you don't have to freehand any of it. So there's lots of different ways of using that product as a design transfer method. And then also you have the addition of it stabilizing your fabric for you, which is really necessary when you're adding all of these zigzag stitches. If anybody plans on doing this technique using a knit sweatshirt or a t-shirt, you need that stabilization or your fabric is going to tunnel underneath all of those zigzag stitches where it pulls your fabric kind of into that little groove of zigzags. You might have experienced that when you're doing applique. You need to stabilize your fabric, add some thread count to it so that those stitches have something to grab onto and they don't pull the fabric underneath. All right. Patricia says, would satin cording work? Absolutely. With satin cording, I might even go with a rayon thread for the couching so that you get that same kind of sheen and beautiful saturated lustrous color that you would have on your satin cording, and match it to a sulky rayon thread so that it really blends in and, you know, just pops off of the fabric surface. Really cool. All right, so Sherry says, reusing pillow form is wise. Yes, because how would we ever store all of those decorative pillows? So great way, just add a little zipper to the bottom of your pillow. And, you know, a lot of people get intimidated by zippers, but really, if you have a zipper foot and you move your needle position when needed, you can sew in a zipper, no big deal. So if you'd like the full tutorial for this pillow or to learn more about yarn couching, you can head on over to our blog at blog.sulky.com. The full tutorial is there, and you can get the dimensions for all the fabric and trim and everything that I used for this particular sample and make yourself a personalized yarn couching pillow. All right, so don't forget, if you have not signed up for our freestanding lace tea lights free webcast happening next Tuesday over on sewingonline.sulky.com, make sure to register. You will get a free embroidery design courtesy of Sulky just by registering for that webcast. It's a cute little bunny, great design for Easter and springtime coming up. So be sure to register and grab up your kit because, like I said, they are going really fast. And I want to make sure that you all get a kit at the amazing special deal price that's going on right now. So I will see you next week for another So What, followed by our freestanding lace tea lights webcast with Sheila Ryan of Designs by Baby Moon. I hope you will join me for both events. And if you are part of a guild, don't forget our crossbody case lounge and learn on March 29th. End of this month. So lots of great projects to be had, techniques to learn, all kinds of stuff coming your way as we dive further into National Quilting Month. So have a wonderful day, everyone. Thanks again for joining me on another So What, and I'll see you next week.